Hello, this is Finn. A few things before I get the video started. So firstly, I lost the audio for the second half of this video. This just means it'll switch over to a more voice-over style video essay and shouldn't be a problem. Second thing is that this video is primarily focused on abuse, escapism, and there are some mentions of throwing up. So if any of these things bother you or will be a problem for you, don't watch the video. That's about all I have to say. Finn from the past, you want to take over? Hey, I'm Finn, and today I wanted to talk about Jack Staubers Opal. So, Opal was a work with Cartoon Network's Adult Swim with Jack Stauber, and it was basically a 12-minute long short film, and it's something you should definitely check out on your own accord first. Don't watch this video before you watch Opal. This will spoil the whole thing. And it's something that's very much better to go in empty-headed, because then you get to get all these impressions and put together these theories for yourselves on your first viewing, or second, because it's something I think you should watch a few times. Two things before we just get into it. A, thank you for 1,000 subscribers. I know at the time of making this I'm a bit past that at 1.1k, but oh well, thank you, it means so much to me. And two, if you want to help pick out the topics for some videos, this video topic was decided by the people over on my Instagram, confusedNarrator_YT. That's where I have polls, Q&As, all kinds of stuff for you guys to just interact with me. So go follow me there if you're interested in that. So what is Opal? Opal is essentially the story of how a little girl fantasizes a different life for herself and how she tries to use this as escapism for her real life. It is essentially at its core a story about a little girl fact-kinning someone from a burger joint. But to be more specific, this is Opal. Yes, that wet dog-looking motherfucker. Now, since we're not ass-backwards cavemen here, we're gonna start at the beginning. So in the opening, the sort of intro is an introduction to the family in the house across the street. First, we see the TV program guide with some TV remotes, crushed beer cans, and cigarettes. Fairly obviously representative of the blind grandpa character and the subject of the song Easy to Breathe. Next, there's a lot of measurement equipment, accessories, and other beauty tools. This is obviously the father, aka the Mirror Man. And lastly, wine and pills for the mother. Now, we actually immediately get symbolism and hints to what the story overall is with this very first shot. See how that window opens up as if we were looking out of it, as if it was from our perspective, and then it guides us to the smaller house? That's because it's where Claire goes to start the imaginative process and stare at the billboard and kind of start the projection onto a better life. A window into another world of sorts. It's also pretty interesting to take a look at this other house. In the ideal scenario that Claire dreams of, it's a small house. It's only a one-story building, whereas her actual home is a quite large 3-story building with plenty of rooms that we see throughout the story. Claire's whole family spends so much time separated and far apart, split up in all these different rooms and all these different floors, that it makes Claire think about the opposite for her fantasy. She wants a small house because she wants to be able to easily talk to her parents and just kind of, chill out. Be a family. So, when we first see Claire entering the dream / the fantasy, the dad's face starts in the same position that it's in on the billboard. And then it snaps out of position and we start to see maybe a bit of life in those cold, dead, unfeeling eyes. And Claire's eyes, they're originally shut tight like we see at the ending with the bad family trying to enter the attic. But this time they open and light up from that, as if the imaginative process has begun and she no longer has to close her eyes tight and pretend she's not where she is. So, of course, this is the billboard family. We see this first with the faces in the identical appearance to the billboard, but also the 4 lights on top that shine down on them. This becomes a recurring motif. Another important thing to note is the lyrical choice. The fantasy family doesn't say, "We love you, Claire." Rather, "We see you."
We see you, Opal, and in our eyes you'll stay.
As Claire wants her family to see her as Claire, unlike the things that they use her for or see her as for their own purpose or gain, which we'll get to more later. They give quick words of niceties, feeding into the fantasy, and then it gets really interesting. A common theory about this dinner bit is that since Claire was starved, she either didn't know what a burger tasted like or that it was indeed food, leading her to dance with it like she imagined what was happening on the billboard. And we then see the billboard perfectly recreated. those lights back and all. There's absolutely no way that this is not the billboard. I don't see how people can lend any credence to the theory that it's not this sort of imaginative process based on the billboard. Now those are the ass-backwards cavemen. Then she notices the house across the way, and the family starts nervously sweating, some of it falling onto the burger. It's most likely that this is in fact Claire coming home, and starting to cry, understanding what's going to happen when she does, no longer able to escape the fantasy, and forced to be around her horrible family. The line from the dad's jingle, "Don't mind the house across the street, it's not where your attention ought to be,"
Don't mind the house across the street, Opal. It's not where your attention ought to be, Opal.
is essentially saying, hey, shit's fucked up in your house. Let's imagine that's where you're not. Sound fun? It's basically a near direct reference to her escape fantasy. When Opal tries to sleep, which is most likely really Claire walking home from somewhere, the window calls to her in a seemingly psychedelic holy way. Likely her on her walk home knowing that that's her point of escapism and she needs to push through the house to get to it. The light that scares her and sends her running into the house is, from the sources I found and looked across, most likely the billboard lighting up at night due to the sun setting. So our first character is this fat fuck, a tub of lard that just goes by Grandpa. Disclaimer: fat shaming is almost never okay in any circumstances. Finn just thinks it's funny to bully stuffed animals for their weight as well as claymation figures. Thank you. So Grandpa's blind, and he wants Claire to fetch him his cigarettes while he watches TV. He's obviously very sick and self-centered. It takes him 3 entire minutes of talking out loud before he notices that something is up with Claire. He's also very absorbed, saying, just like the people on TV, you're more interested in me than anything you got going on in your life. Fucking prick. And then we get our first song, Easy to Breathe. The lyrics are simple enough and it's pretty straightforward. The first lines are him asking why does it sound so easy to breathe on TV, not accepting that it's own fault for the damage he's done to himself with his cigarettes.
Tell me, why does it sound so easy to breathe on TV? I can't see why it sounds so easy to breathe.
Next is his self-centeredness. The song focuses on how much he thinks the TV is after him specifically. All the women that sing on TV are meant for him and him alone, while advertisements are salesmen wanting him so much they fight each other like dogs.
I'm popular here. They all sing to me. Idea salesmen, they want my soul, Claire. They fight over me like dogs.
He thinks he has the most interesting life, and that Claire and the people of TV obsess over him, when in reality it's just his own self-obsession driving this. Due to her not speaking, and possibly being somewhere she wasn't supposed to and picking up a weird smell, he chases her off. The grandpa also asks, why aren't you talking, Claire? Although, the most likely reason for her not talking is because she was conditioned not to talk to them, learning that it's best to sit and listen while they rant about themselves. Because this is a very, very selfish family. Next up is Sam the Pancake Face Man. Quite simply known as Father, the Father, aka the Mirror Man, is my personal favorite, just in the way that his song goes the absolute hardest. The Father uses Claire and others as a point to compare himself to and kind of raise himself above them. The first hint of this is actually where his mirror is positioned. If you look at where the mirror is, it's set up so that his head gets put on top of them, so he can immediately compare themselves. You know the tale of Narcissus? Dude read that and thought it was like a Bible to live by. He tells Claire that he's glad he doesn't have her ankles, and that he'd look good in what she's wearing. He talks and talks and talks and rambles about nothing but himself. But then when Claire tries to leave, he gets really, really upset. He drops the burden of responsibility by saying things like he's just a little thing that's growing, and no one should be mad at him, he's learning, even though he's a fully functioning adult man. His whole thing is that there's something amiss with his looks, and when he went out into the world, he wasn't exactly accepted by everyone. But he still wants to be seen and thinks everyone else will think he's absolutely beautiful, and that people will want to savor his image. Reflection chamber is an interesting term that's used in his song. Reflection chamber is a sort of nod to an echo chamber, a term which means kind of repeating the same stuff back and forth to each other in a small group without any disagreement, which then amplifies the ideas and further radicalizes the idea itself.
In this case, he's reflecting back on himself over and over without any negative reaction, slowly leading him to becoming more and more narcissistic and thinking he's more and more beautiful. The next bit of his song feeds into this more. The first line is, "Follow me, I'm on the brink of visual epiphany," saying that I'm almost at my peak, soon I'll let others see, and then I'll show them. I'll show them all. Then he directly addresses his God complex, saying God is in my skin. He's in there, making himself some kind of god and savior, and once he comes out, everyone's gonna love him and rejoice. They'll be dancing on the streets because this dude looks above average. Last up is the Mother. The Mother character is interesting. Mother's room is tarnished, as if fits of anger led to her destroying things. There's pill bottles and wine bottles laying all around, and when the Mother sees Claire, she grabs her by the ankle and says, "Being a person today, Claire?" Referencing that she knows about the fantasies and spending time away from the family in the attic. She says goodness will come if she lies and waits for it, and that Claire should be more considerate, but she's forgiven. A common manipulation tactic where you bring up a flaw in another person, real or not, but instantly say you forgive them. And the mother and father actually differ in a very interesting way. See, unlike the father, who drags people down to push himself further up, the mother just drags people down to her level in order to feel some kind of normalcy, or as if she is normal or average. For example, she says, "We don't live, Claire, we survive." She says we, not herself or I, and her song, Virtuous Cycle, is absolutely full of references to this. Starting off, Mama needs a little girl to land on. The mom needs the daughter to support her, not the other way around like it should be. And then the next line, Mama needs a little girl to fall into her arms. Mama needs to feel like she's supporting someone to make herself feel better, but Mama needs a mama's girl to take good care. That's the next line, and I think it's important to note that it doesn't say if the mama needs the taken care of or the mama's girl. And the last line, Mama needs a baby girl to hold her hair, a reference to throwing up and having someone there to help and hold your hair out of the bowl. This, of course, references the daughter doing things that she's way too young to be doing or to be understanding, and the mother being a piece of shit and a heavy alcoholic. Alcoholism is a serious disease, and it can develop in anyone. This is not me saying that she's a bad person because of her alcoholism. It's just another part of her character, which tends to make her a crummier, shittier person. The mom then says that Claire's just like her, just as bad, just as powerless, and in an attempt to prove this to both Claire and herself, she reaches out, most likely to hit or otherwise abuse Claire, and Claire runs to the last room, the attic, and the familiar window. Opal/Claire sees the billboard, and the fantasy briefly falls apart. We see visions of her family and what they use her for. First, the grandpa's eyes. Since the grandpa didn't have any eyes, he used Claire to find and fetch things, most importantly his cigarettes. Then Claire is one of the father's mirrors, showing how he uses her as a point of comparison to feel better about himself. And also the eldritch H.P. Lovecraftian demon that he actually looks like. But Mother is using her as a pill, some sort of, temporary aid for health that can also be abused if not properly regulated. And then our last shot is seeing her exit the fantasy and showing that it is a fantasy, confirming it for the audience by zooming out of her head where she's thinking of it. Opal is a story about escapism. And not just in the most obvious example of Opal/Claire. The grandpa uses the escapism of the false belief that the TV people are speaking to him to escape the fact that he's old, dying, and nobody cares about him anymore. The father uses the narcissistic belief that he is beautiful as a form of escapism to avoid recognizing the fact that he might not think he's beautiful, and he probably hates the way he looks, which is why he spends so much time working on himself and doing fucked up things to his body. Then, of course, there's the mother's form of escapism, alcohol and drug abuse, and possibly abuse of poor Opal. In her song, we see she clearly had some kind of traumatic incident where 911 was called. We're not really sure what it was or what it alludes to, but something went very wrong, and this has been something that might have destroyed the family. She's trying to escape that reality by sitting and waiting, claiming that she's good and she didn't deserve anything bad that happened to her. She believes that she's powerless, completely unable to change anything about her situation, but she needs other people to feel the same way so she can keep justifying that fantasy to herself, which is why she does the things she does to Claire. It's a fucked up family and a fucked up story, and the perfect ending for it, honestly. Yeah, the ending is horribly depressing, but I'm glad Jack Stauber stuck with that stylistic approach to it. I feel like an Opal with a happy ending would not be the same story at all. So while I may pray and hope for the post-canon Opal to somehow find some sort of escape, or I guess Claire to find an escape, I can't rely on that, and that is just a headcanon. I need to understand that Opal is living through this trauma still. This character is not escaping, and neither are any of the rest of the family members. Because that's the reality of the situation for a lot of people. It's fucked, but it's a good story, and I'm glad Jack Stauber took the time to tell it. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, this video was picked out by the people over on my Instagram, confused_narrator_YT. If you want to send in things you want to see videos on, go ahead and do it there. Also, please like and subscribe. Thank you. And yeah, later.